So I think you've all been able to hear him speak, but this is John Parke. He's from the New Jersey Audubon Society. And he sent me a very amazing, very long bio, which means that he's been able to do a lot of really cool things. So he's going to be a really great speaker for us today. He is the Stewardship Project Director for New Jersey Audubon and has been with New Jersey Audubon since 2005, designing, implementing habitat restoration projects on both private and public land. John received his BA in Environmental Studies from Ramapo State College of New Jersey, is a certified professional wetland specialist with the Society of Wetland Specialists, and a certified ecologist by the Ecological Society of America. He is also an adjunct instructor at Rutgers. I've taken his class. Everybody should take his online avian field identification class. We didn't get to go birding, which is kind of sad, but it was really helpful in getting into birding, which I'm now obsessed with. And he's an alumnus of the New Jersey Agricultural Leadership Development Program and the New Jersey Conservation Leadership Program. So
all right.
Thank you all. And
thank you very much, Kelly.
You're welcome.
Hi, everybody. How you guys doing? Thanks for having me, number one. Kelly we were talking a little bit earlier that Professor Ed Green, I don't know how many of you guys have got a chance to have Ed at Rutgers, had a really cool class that he would do exactly this while having professionals kind of come back and talk to students, really giving an idea, like, you know, hey, this is what the field is, this is how we got there, and, you know, kind of doing what Kelly was saying before, these tips and tricks about how to break into it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, you know, especially the wildlife aspects of things, it's really hard to get into the field. Research seems to be the thing that, you know, it's easy enough to get into that area if you're going to go into academics, but to get into the nonprofit sector, which I'm in now, but I didn't start out that way. I started in, well, when I got out of college, I could not find really any good well, directly related wildlife jobs, because at the time when I went through college in the 80s, there was more to do with development in New Jersey, pollution in New Jersey, that kind of thing. It was really kind of big, and I got into more about consulting. Worked for an environmental consulting firm for about 16 years. And even though I had experience with wildlife, even though I was doing like wetland delineations and threatened endangered species studies, it was kind of weird because I was working for developers and working for polluters. And, you know, that's the only jobs that were out there at that time. You needed, it almost seemed like you almost needed a way of like going through academia to get your PhD, that kind of thing, to actually get into those fields. And they were just limited. So although the money was amazing, I won't lie, the private sector was just what it was, right? It was you were consulting on these $1 million projects. You were finding out how to delineate those wetlands so they knew where to build, where not to build, working with the regulations to deal with the permit aspects of things. It didn't feel right. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong, it just didn't feel right for me. Everything I've always wanted to do is work with wildlife, you know, just from a kid. I mean, I loved hiking, hunting, fishing, bird watching, all of that. And I knew there was a connection, went to school. But once I got out of school, I tried doing a master's. It wasn't for me. I recognized, though, that if there was going to be any way I could switch over into that field, I needed to make connections. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what I did. I don't think it exactly was the greatest way of doing it, but I definitely learned some things that I want to pass along to you, because you're in a good position right now. Kelly was saying that for the most part, a lot of you are sophomores right around there. Yeah, see a lot of head shaking. Yeah. So you're in a really good position right now because you have opportunities and you gotta take them. Don't just kick back and say, hey man, college is great. It's a party life, it's social life, whatever. College has these amazing situations that don't come up again later on after you graduate. Kelly was telling me about she had an opportunity to go to Kenya. All right. Now, it didn't work out exactly right, but that was the right move. Okay. Take advantage of every single thing that Rutgers possibly throws at you, even if it's something like Grace. Where's Grace? There, she's down there. Grace was saying, "Oh, I got a lot of work, and 2 jobs. I know it's tough, but the key is finding that time. Reach out beyond your comfort zone. Find the research that interests you, and start actually getting to know that professor, getting to know those kids around and those other students in that area, and then start to make sure you get a relationship with that person. Not just, hey man, I dug your class and that was great. Start following up. Get to know them. Show them you're interested in doing a little bit extra. Because what I had to wind up doing was I spent 16 years in consulting on a job that I could not stand, stressed out of my gourd, recognizing that more or less this wasn't for me because I was literally helping to develop properties that were wooded or wetlands or whatever, and knowing full well that I didn't want to be in that position. So what do I have to do? Make connections. I started volunteering for every possible nonprofit you can think of. Nature Conservancy, New Jersey Audubon, Sierra Club. And one of the best things I ever did was the Wildlife Conservation Corps, which is a group that the Division of Fish and Wildlife has, all right, that you sign up and you basically have access then to getting on projects with staff from Division of Fish and Wildlife. Sometimes it could be everything from trout stocking to tagging bears to doing work with acoustics for bat projects, for doing rattlesnake surveys. That alone, that opportunity and putting in that time to do the volunteering with them and getting to know the biologists, getting to know those individuals and staying in touch with them ultimately got me my job that I do now, but has afforded me all that experience that I did not get because I did not take advantage of that in college. I just got through basically just enjoying the college life and missed those opportunities, and I was kicking myself ever since. So when you have that time now, do it and stay with it. And ask those questions, ask them, because those people want to help you. They want to get a chance to give that kind of information that they've had those life experiences to you, because the environmental field is a hard one, and the wildlife aspects, especially in a state like New Jersey, which is we're the most densely populated state. We're at build out. There's a lot of wildlife conflicts that come into play now, and they need people like you guys that are going down this road and into that field. Going back a little bit, when I say about volunteering, when I did the work for Wildlife Conservation Corps, and I started to get to know those people at Division of Fish and Wildlife, one of the folks I got to meet at the time was this guy, Eric Stiles. Eric was working for endangered non-game species, ENSP, at Division of Fish and Wildlife. And at the time, he was heading up this thing called the Herpetile Survey for New Jersey. And they asked a bunch of folks that were volunteering for the Wildlife Conservation Corps. They'd go out and they would assign you quadrants, where you literally were just going out and writing down every single herp that you would come across, every turtles, snakes, frogs, you name it, and literally taking the coordinates, it was all simple stuff, and then handing that in the data sheets. As simple as that might sound, it actually did start to get to the point where you were collecting good data, you were understanding the process, you were meeting those right people, but your data was being put into a bigger database for larger things, and it made you feel, wait, I am getting something done. I am helping out to the overall initiative, and I started to have a friendship with Eric. He was the guy that I would sit my data to. I would always let him know, hey, I did this, but here's a bunch of photos that would go along with them. Here's instead of just putting down the coordinates, I would actually put the maps down and start to, give them the GIS stuff and all the other good things, trying to go a little bit above and beyond. So that way, that individual would remember me. Well, fast forward to, let me see, I'm going to say it had to be 15 years later. I was working in a consulting firm, and we got a call from a group in Bedminster. It was like a homeowners group, and they were looking to stop a development in a park. This park had a passive recreation area that was more or less for habitat. And one of the things that was really important about this particular habitat was wood turtle, another threatened species in New Jersey. And the wood turtle at this site would use these fields, these big open fields, big grassland meadows, for foraging, but also for nesting. The township at the time got in their heads that they needed to increase their recreational space. And the only place that they could think about doing it was in these fields that had already been deed restricted for passive recreation, which meant you can't put a ball field in it, okay? And systematically over a couple of years, they were starting to encroach into the area, maybe mow it a little bit more, maybe start to push the parking lot in a little bit more. And it was becoming very evident that they were looking to degrade the habitat to a point where where it might not be suitable anymore for wood turtle. Because if you went for the permitting would have came back and said, it's a wood turtle nesting area, you can't do what you want to do. And my job at the time for the consulting firm, what I was normally doing for the developers were, you would get hired to do a threatened endangered species survey for that parcel that they were looking to develop. If you were able to prove, sometimes it took 1 or 2 years, 3 years, whatever it was, that species was no longer there, or the habitat was not suitable for that species, the DEP would grant a permit for that developer to do what they want, to put in whatever the development was. That was what I normally was being dealt with. And it's totally legal to do it that way. It's totally legal. The problem was that I felt bad. Now I had a situation where I had a homeowners group that was trying to stop that, and I was on the other side for the first time, where they had hired my firm to more or less take a look at this site and prove that they were still there, but also take a look at the permit applications and everything, because things didn't quite seem right on the way that they were explaining things. Plus also, like I said, they were systematically doing little things over time to degrade that habitat. So that was my first opportunity in 16 years from when I started out really trying to do good stuff for wildlife to say, wow, I could actually make a difference here. And wow, this is exactly what what I wanted to be doing to help a species, and really get an understanding of what was the habitat, what needed to stay, and why we had to shoot down this ball field proposal. So I started my investigation, and one of the things I thought about was, I said, I need support. I need support from some credible organizations to kind of back me on this. Bedminster, the township, is right around the corner, more or less, from New Jersey Audubon's headquarters. And in the time that I had done the Herpert Atlas for Eric, Eric was hired by New Jersey Audubon to become their vice president of stewardship. All right. The stewardship department at New Jersey Audubon was responsible for habitat restoration. They worked with the private sector, they worked with the public sector, they worked with just about anybody that was willing to deal with good habitat and good, ecological practices and best management and all that. So I called Eric and I said, "Hey man, you remember me? John Parke." And oh yeah, Herp Atlas. Hope all is well. Yeah, things are good. So I'm working for this consulting firm, and we're doing this thing over at Bedminster where we're trying to stop a development from going into wood turtle areas. And he says, that's fantastic. Send me what you got. I'll take a look at it, and if it's something we want to participate in, we'll be more than happy to support you. So I took all my reports and all my data and everything that I was looking to do to stop the thing, and I sent it over to Eric. And Eric got back to me and he said, "We are definitely on board. Based on what I see here, we're on board. We're going to support you. We're going to help you." But, reading through all of this, we have a position that's coming up that we need somebody to do grassland bird work out in Harmony Township. It's a 3-year position, fully funded. And reading what you have here, the opposition that we're dealing with is also development. Do you ever think you would consider maybe working for a nonprofit? And that's when it hit me. I was like, wow, all of that work in all those years with volunteering, making those connections, because you don't know where those connections are going to wind up. Eric at the time was working for the Division of Fish and Wildlife, but he had transitioned into a whole different position at New Jersey Audubon. He remembered me because that volunteer work and going the extra mile. I kept in contact with him over time. Emails, "Hey man, how you doing? What's the latest at Audubon?" I became a member of Audubon. I would go to the trips. Then I started doing like beginning birding walks. Again, keep your face in there. And Eric was like, "Wow, I really think you would be good for this." However, pay wise, it's a 3-year position. It's about half of what you're making now. There's no bonuses anymore. There's no company car. There's no, hell, at the time it was like, well, you got to share an office with about 5 people. And our copier at the time was a copier that you can only do one at a time. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm listening to this, and I was married, I had a mortgage, and I had a young son, and I kept thinking about it. And I remember going to my wife and saying, "Look, I got the opportunity of a lifetime. It might not ever come up again. And all I know is that I'm stressed out of my gourd going to this office every day and not feeling good about anything that I'm doing. But the money's amazing. Or I could take door number 2, feel good every day, meet new people, see new things, get new experiences, and actually want to wake up and go to work because it's no longer work when you love what you do." I have an amazing wife, and she said, "We can't miss this. You can't miss it. You got to take a shot." So I took the job. And I remember it was the scariest thing I ever did because I was a little bit older, and again, you got to start all over again, really, is what it came down to. And I was very intimidated because the people around me, PhDs, masters, this and that. They had they were from academia, or they had been in nonprofits their whole life and blah, blah. But I soon found out something, that experience I had by not going through the research world, not going directly to a nonprofit, but trying something else out in the private sector, having to deal with attorneys all the time, state officials, politicians, big business, other agencies, all the stuff that I always was like, wow, this is not where I wanted to be. It turned out that that experience put me in a place that I brought something new to the nonprofit world. I wasn't your typical nonprofit tree hugging academic. I had a perspective, and I actually was able to look at things from a business point of view. I was able to look at it from a regulatory point of view. I was able to look at that from points of view that, and I will say this, and it's going to sound sometimes kind of harsh, but it's true, because I see it now with a lot of folks that come out of college. We all want to save the world. We all want to do the best for it. There's that, and then there's reality, meaning we can do the best we can with what we have, but you have to look at different sides of the coin all the time. Nothing is black and white. Nothing is just, it's this species and that's all we're doing, and you can't do this, you can't do. There are so many options and so many variables that go into planning for habitat and species recovery and everything else that, honestly, the work that I had done before in regulatory and knowing those individuals and getting a rapport with other people and understanding how to work through a legal process or with a regulatory agency actually put me in a position that I was way more qualified for doing some of the stuff that we're doing now than some of the folks that had already been there ahead of me, because they never had that other perspective. If you take anything out of this, again, like I'm still going to finish this story, but concentrate on what I'm saying about this, about perspective, that there are so many different opinions. Climate change right now, the variables are unbelievable on what is really going on out there and what you have to do to plan for these things for long term. That I see a lot, even with certain organizations, where this is the only way. It's a very narrow way of looking at things. And what happens is you alienate a whole slew of people that ultimately could wind up helping you achieve the goals that you're actually trying to do. Even if you have shared goals with that organization, sometimes they're not looking at it from the big picture. It's only, you can't cut a tree. That's it. You can't cut a tree. No, you can do that with ecological forestry if you plan things out, if you actually know and get the right individuals and experts and all that. But you got to work it all. So at the end of the day, when I wound up taking that job for New Jersey Audubon, we ultimately stopped that development. I wound up switching jobs then, obviously, like I said, to New Jersey Audubon. And by doing that, not only were we able to stop the development, but because now I was on that other side and had that perspective, I called another friend of mine that I knew through the Wildlife Conservation Corps, this guy, Brian Zarati. And Brian is the turtle expert for New Jersey. And I said, Brian, I'm working for Audubon now. It just came over, we stopped the development, but they're going to need, they're still trying to do permitting stuff because of all the violations that they had for all that systematic little work that they were doing to ruin the habitat. And I said, Brian, what do you think? There's a road crossing there. And one of the things we were thinking about was, can we go through the state to try to do, speed bumps and signage? And Brian said, because no, man, I got a better thing. We're looking for a site that we can work with the DOT, the Department of Transportation, and put in underground crossings to go from where the hibernacular was to the nesting areas. Because this road too was a more or less almost like a freeway for the residents there to go in and out. And it would just, roadkill was off the charts. So I met with Brian. We met with the town that was pretty ticked off that we had just ruined their ball fields. And Brian presented a plan. And the plan was he got a grant, and he said, we're going to help you mitigate this problem, and we're going to help you see how valuable this site is, that the ball field was only going to be limited use, but you have something, you have a real jewel, a gem there of habitat for not just wood turtle, but all these other species. And you should be embracing this. And we're going to help you out by getting this grant to put in underground tunnels under the road for crossings. We put cameras in. Brian then connected with another person from Montclair State. We worked with her to actually do a study on it. And at the end of the day, what turned out to be a horrible situation for the wood turtle, which would look like it was just doomed from day one on the way that this town had approached it, turned out to be one of the better projects. In fact, now the state, Brian, and some other folks over there, this woman Gretchen and Kenzie and all, they have worked it into a bigger project where they're doing a lot more of these underground passes for wildlife. But it all started with a violation, a guy who was trying to get out of the career that he had chose because he knew it was bad, get into this and then work with other people. The take home on that is, just because that they're developers, or just because that they might have violated things, just because they clearly did not understand what they had, to step back sometimes and try to educate those individuals and show them that, like I said before, you can work together on these things. But it all came down to those contacts too. Eric, Brian, the guys I met through that, keeping in contact with them. And then ultimately what happened is it turned into this greater project. Since that time, of the 3 years that I was supposed to be there, now this is my 16th year at Audubon. And we got additional grants and we got additional work, because those projects that I started out on, everything kind of went in a good way. But again, I think it was also because of that other perspective. So the take homes in a couple of these things are, that I really want to jam home. Volunteer, make connections, keep in contact with those connections. When you do make the contact and they offer you something, take it. Take it and then do above and beyond what they're asking you, so it sticks in their head. So later on down the line, when you have your resume together and you're looking for those positions, reach out to them. Even if they don't have something that is right there readily available for you, they might know somebody that is looking for that. And they'll hand it off. Hey, man, this guy was really good. He gave me X, Y, and Z, and I didn't even ask for it. That's a go-getter. Go for it. The other thing, GIS. How many of you, I could see a bunch of you, right? Yeah, there's one. You're taking it, right? Don't blow it off. I don't know if Rutgers mandates it or not now, if in the class. They don't? Kelly's shaking her head no. Okay.
I just want to say they used to require fundamentals of geomatics and the lab, and they took away that requirement. So it used to be required and now it's not. And now they're requiring us to do modeling.
All right, modeling's great.
It is.
But I'm going to tell you right now, everything, and I mean everything, is GIS based. Wildlife management, GIS based, flat out. No two ways about it. Okay. But even if you don't go down the wildlife path, policy planning, marketing, they all use it. You gotta learn it. You gotta. Whatever you do, if you come away with just one class, well, 2 classes, avian identification with John Parke is amazing, but GIS, okay, you gotta do it. And here's the bonus. You have Rick Lathrop, the god of GIS, all right, at your disposal. You gotta take that class and you gotta learn it, because without it, I gotta admit, when we get resumes now and there's no GIS experience, I toss it, because we cannot sit down and try to train somebody in it. It's impossible right now because the work's happening too fast. So GIS. The other thing I'm going to tell you to take, which is also going to sound kind of, well, GIS doesn't sound crazy, but for this, creative writing. Take a writing course. Oh my God, I can't tell you what I see out there from some of the you know, not just research papers are a different ball game. I'm talking about trying to communicate your thoughts and experiences and everything from blogs um, to proposals to grant writing. It's You can tell who's been in a lab all their lives and who has actually written something that's not a technical um, paper. Take a writing class, because also that ability to communicate is just it's just such a hard skill, I think, for a lot of people to get to master. I write more. There's times when all I'm doing over like, especially during the wintertime when the field seasons are done, it's all we're doing is writing. It's writing those articles. It's writing those policy position papers. It's writing the blogs to try to inform people. And grants. Oh my God, grants. Just living off grants.
Can I plug a few classes?
Definitely.
Rutgers has a grant proposal class, which I've taken. There's a grant writing class, and we have a science and technical writing class. I'm in science and technical writing, and I can say it's not as great as the other two, but we luckily have all the resources that a giant university provides, and those are some of those opportunities that students can learn. Thank gosh.
Sign up, take them, because when I see that somebody's got grant experience, that is a big plus. The reason is, in the nonprofit world, well, there's a whole bunch in research too, but in the nonprofit world that I'm in now, if I don't find grants, I don't have a job. Okay. Donations, foundations give you money here and there, on the nonprofit. But the key, it's grants. It's all about the grants. There's so much money in the grant world, it isn't funny, but you got to compete for it. And if you can't write about what it is, and you can't convey that information that you're trying to get across to get that grant, you won't get the grant. And then what happens? It trickles down, and all of a sudden you're out of a job. Mind you, remember when I told you that they said they had 3 years funded in a grant position? That's how I got that job. And I rolled the dice saying, all right, well, let's hope that in 3 years I do enough good work and I can write a different grant and get it together. And I've been there ever since. Last month, I wrote 4 different grants for everything from Atlantic white cedar restoration to bobwhite quail translocation to forest stewardship planning for golden wing warbler to even prescribed burning, where it was another one that we were trying to get into. All those things, you need somebody that can actually put it all together. So as a supervisor at Audubon, when we put out for a position, I'm always looking for GIS, grant writing. The other one I was going to tell you too, or creative writing, but I'm also grants. The other one I was going to tell you too was take a business class as well to get those other perspectives. Because if you get wrapped up in one discipline all day long, you definitely get pigeonholed into your thinking about what else is out there. Why is that other guy that I'm trying to get my point across to, or he's stopping that project, or he's got questions? Why can't he see what I'm seeing? That's my favorite. I know I'm right. I'm saving this thing. The other guy's coming from a different world. And if you can meet in between and find a compromise, all of a sudden that guy becomes an ally. That guy all of a sudden has his world opened up to what it is you're trying to get across. And you might start out small with that developer or that, I don't know, that business, or even another organization that might oppose the same thing that, might oppose the thing that you're trying to get across. Forestry in particular is a real big one in New Jersey, that there's a lot of environmental groups that are literally just blocking heads because they don't see it. One guy doesn't want to do anything. The other guys want to do active management, and it comes together. Try to see their other perspective. Understand it. So when it also gives you an advantage, because then you can start to figure out, how do I want to propose what I'm trying to propose? so that other individual can see what I'm seeing, or at least get to a point where I can find those compromise. So a business class, a writing class, grant writing, GIS, you have those, you have a little bit of experience, like, and I see volunteering too, or you did stuff in the Wildlife Society. That goes so much further in somebody that's looking at a resume than when I get a PhD in front of me and I go, I know this guy, all they did was look at this, and that's their field. They're going to do what they're going to do exactly the way they're going to do it that way. And I don't bother looking at those resumes anymore, because it's, I know that we're not going to, it's not going to be a good fit. You want somebody that wants to actually help that resource, but you also want that person that's going to be able to talk to a slew of different people. In New Jersey, especially New Jersey, it's a melting pot. You got a little bit of everything here. The ag communities, the urban communities, all the wildlife aspects that we have to deal with, it's different situations, and you literally need to know how to navigate through all of that stuff. The Wildlife Society, like what Kelly was saying before about they're offering up those kind of opportunities to meet up with people and go out, do the bird banding, find the time. Because you're never going to get these things back once you graduate. And it stinks trying to learn on the fly, especially if you've been hired and now you're under evaluations to maintain and keep your job. This is the time that you can, you don't understand something, someone's going to be there for you to help you along, as opposed to like, well, why didn't you learn this, and how come you put it on your resume and you really don't know what you're doing? This is it. I don't know. I'm trying to think what else I can try to tell you guys. But I just realized we've been talking for 45 minutes and hadn't shut up.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, so let's do questions.
I have a question of like what your job looks like at Audubon. Like, what kind of bird projects do you work on?
Okay.
You
Like
said a lot about restoration. Is that mainly what you do?
So my position as stewardship project director, I'm lucky in that I get a whole bunch of different things. I work on everything from wetlands to grasslands to forests. It's a smattering of everything. The other thing that I wind up doing a lot is I work with a lot of folks in the agricultural community, and there are conservation programs that USDA through the NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, has that you can get funding if you're a farmer or landowner that qualifies for it to do conservation work, everything from soil erosion stuff to habitat work. My job is to work in those communities, help those landowners and farmers get the funding, develop the projects with the biologists at NRCS for a target species, and then implement that job. So some of the stuff I've done, but it's not just birds. That's the other thing. New Jersey Audubon, just to give you a quickie on that one, is we started out, clearly we're bird centric, but over time we've evolved, and it's more about the habitat, because when you do work for one species, you're really doing work for a suite of species, right? So the folks in my department kind of look at things holistically. So if you're doing something for golden winged warbler, where you got to do forest treatments and you're doing thinnings and that kind of stuff, it's not just for it's more or less like your poster child kind of bird. But the suite of species underneath that, it all falls into play where you're trying to figure out, well, if I'm doing it for this species, what about and I'm cutting in a forest, I got to worry about the forest interior breeding birds, but they're going to utilize the young forest for fledglings and forage. So you kind of max that all together. So we've done stuff, like I said, with the forestry aspect. The one big one that I've been doing the last 5 years is bobwhite quail translocation, where we worked with Division of Fish and Wildlife and another group called Tall Timbers. They are a research lab down in Tallahassee, Florida. They are the experts on quail translocation. If you don't know what translocation is, it's when you capture a wild animal and then you bring it to another area to try to jumpstart a population, or, maybe spread out genetics, whatever. But in Jersey's case, we bobwhite quail have been extirpated from the state. They are no longer around. There's no wild birds. It was a combination of things that, from their demise, everything from development to not enough early successional habitat. So we started working on a project in the Pine Barrens. Actually, behind me is one of the photos from the site, to do ecological forestry, where you do thinnings, you do controlled burnings, you basically create a young forest habitat. And ultimately, what we were looking to see is if you can bring up birds from quail, bobwhite, from southern latitudes down in Georgia, Florida, that thing, and get them to, will they survive in the northern latitudes? Because when you do translocations, you're supposed to really be utilizing the animal that's closest to your latitude, all right? So you don't have that big gap. Unfortunately for quail, their entire population is tanked nationwide. And the only two states that seem to have a decent quail population that could afford to give up birds were down in Georgia and Florida. So there was a big question to be answered, whether or not that would even work. We had a 5-year study where we were trapping birds down in Georgia, bringing them up to the Pine Barrens, releasing them. They had radio collars and tags, and you do telemetry work to figure out where they all go, look at it and figure out if this is even viable on that landscape. And that was a cool project. We're at a point now, we've shown that it can work with the southern latitudes, but there has to be a lot more habitat restoration in order to even to get to that point where you can bring up birds. In fact, that particular paper just got accepted into the Journal of Wildlife Management from Wildlife Society. So that'll be coming out soon. But it talks about that whole thing. So that was a pretty cool project. But the really cool thing that I got to do on that, and again, why I love my job so much, is every day, when I was working on this, you go down to the Pine Barrens on our subject site. We had we had some students actually from the University of Delaware that were working on the project with us, and they would do the telemetry and all. But I got to see species, both plant and animal, in the Pine Barrens that I only got to see in books, because you're so in the deep in the heart of the Pine Barrens on private property that were actually allowed to do active management. So they were cutting trees, they were harvesting trees, they were doing that for watershed management because it was a cranberry production area. But inadvertently, they had created all this amazing habitat by doing that work. So when we got there, there wasn't that much you had to tweak. But what we got to see was rare orchids, rattlesnakes, pine snakes, prairie warblers, nighthawks nesting, all of these cool things because they were doing active management on that. And that was part of that study. If we're just doing this for quail, what else is going to benefit? Well, it turned out it was a whole bunch of things. And it was the most fulfilling sensation to actually see that what you're doing, all those years of putting into time and everything else, now we're at a point where we're making a big impact, a huge impact. I was talking before you guys got on, we were talking with Grace down there, and Grace Hagman. How do you say that, Grace? Grace, you still there?
Sorry, I was muted. It's Hageman.
Hagerman.
It's weird.
Grace was telling us that she's been feeling kind of, out of place because she's doing stuff with spotted lanternfly, and she's getting rid of those eggs. She's like, oh man, there's so many eggs. I don't know are we making an impact? Sure, you're making an impact. That's the greatest thing to do. Don't ever lose sight of that, because there will come a day when we do finally beat, a spotted lanternfly, or we're out there in the field doing other things. That when you see it all come together and you got a chance to work on that project and you get to release the quail, or you're in a spot where there's no more spotted lanternflies, there's something about that. It totally brings it together, and the reason why you got into this field in the first place. And it just makes for such a great feeling every day to know you're making that difference. don't give up, Grace, on scraping plant and fly. All right, you're doing a good thing.
Oh, it's so gross.
Do your thing. What else we got out there, guys? Any other questions?
I have a question.
Gabrielle, you've been laughing through this whole thing over there. What's going on?
I'm just
good?
enjoying it. I actually have a question.
Yeah.
So would you recommend spending some time in environmental consulting as a, first sort of exposure out of the gate of college?
I realize now I had a good experience. I think it depends also on the firm that you actually hook up with. Okay. In my case, I had a very good experience because I had a good firm. But what was interesting about the firm that I was in is that the wetlands, the land management, the T&E stuff was a very small part of the thing. It was really, in fact, the job, I dealt more in pollution controls and stuff than I was with the wildlife. That's why I was just also not feeling it. And then when I do it, it just didn't feel right. There are firms that do nothing but wildlife consulting and wetland delineations and land policy. I probably should have gone that route, and I think I might have had even a better experience in my in there. So what I would say to you is just, when you're out there looking, just be a little bit more selective. In my position, look, I had a BA from Ramapo State College. All right, I had zero experience other than through what I did at the school with a couple internships, and I didn't take it serious. So when the job came up and I was having a hard time finding one, I had literally had a friend of mine that I graduated with who was in that position and said, "Hey man, we're looking for, are you working yet?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Here it is." And I took it. Once I got there, I started working in that little spot. We developed that section of the consulting firm to get it to a place where that's all I was doing for a while. But in hindsight, yeah, I probably should have applied more to a consulting firm that's all they did. And maybe I wouldn't have had to go through the years and years and years and years of volunteer work,
I have a question for you.
Sure.
And it's maybe more of like a selfish question, but something that I struggle with a lot is if I meet somebody and I want to keep a contact, sometimes I feel like I'm bothering them. And it just is like, it feels like I'm doing some sort of one-way transaction where I'm like, "Hey, how are you doing?" Is there any advice that you could give to students on how to maintain the connections that they're meeting now? Say they're sophomores and they're going to be graduating in like 2 years. How do you keep your face in somebody's, head for that long without seeming like a nuisance?
No, it's, you'd be surprised, especially college students, you'd be surprised how many people want to help you along. The thing I did with Eric and a couple other folks now, there's friends of mine, Chris Shantz, who works for Division of Fish and Wildlife, and Melissa Warner, who works for Division of Fish and Wildlife. I got to know all those guys, but what I would do is I'd follow what they were doing. And if Audubon came out with I became a member of Audubon, and I would get the magazine and I would read through it. And if there was something in particular note that I thought was good, I would just send Eric a note. "Hey man, loved the article on blah, blah, blah. Great job." That's all it was. Nothing else, no pressure. Just, "Hey, love what you're doing. Great to see you, keep up the good work." And you get a return email. "Hey man, great that you read it. Glad you liked it. What are you up to?" Just simple things. Keep it simple. Just stay in their rotation of people that they know that you're keeping in contact with. And let's face it, nowadays, I mean, I was talking before 80s and 90s when hell, email wasn't even like, it was just starting to go. You're starting to get going. Now it's super easy. Go to the conferences. If the Wildlife Society's having their annual, see if you can figure out how to get to those things, meet those people, take advantage of those opportunities that through the Wildlife Society for those scholarships to go to the conferences, because that's where you wind up making those connections. And then you can do that follow-up. "Hey man, so you at the wildlife conference and really loved your session on blah, blah, blah." So that's all it takes.
Speaking of scholarships, everybody, I'm greasing my competition right now. I'm sorry to myself, but there's going to be 2 Wildlife Society scholarships that are The deadline is November 1st, and I just was at the New Jersey state chapter meeting, and nobody has applied yet. There is a free scholarship, 2 free scholarships available right now. So I know I'm going to be applying. I hope you guys also apply, because if one of us makes it, it'll be great. It'll be great for the whole chapter. So apply to those. They're in your email. I did see it. I did send them out maybe a couple weeks ago. So you got to apply for those. And then the state chapter people know your name.
That's right. That's right. Anybody else got anything? Any questions?
I have something.
Go for it, Glenn.
You mentioned that we should volunteer.
Mhm.
What organizations and what places in New Jersey do you think would be, well, not best, but like where in general should we go to?
Right off the bat, the easiest one in the world is that Wildlife Conservation Corps through Division of Fish and Wildlife.
Mhm.
All right. To me, that was the greatest thing I ever could have done, because it put you in a spot where you had multi-discipline kind of stuff. You had everything from fisheries to mammals to herps to, I mean, it literally spanned the whole thing, and you could pick and choose, what kind of projects you wanted to get into and volunteer. But even if it's stuff outside, maybe you want to do mammals, but there's an opportunity with trout, take the trout. Just get that other perspective, get to know those folks. But that one by far, I think, is for New Jersey, gave me a ton of experience, put me in touch with so many people in both the state, but also nonprofits that were partnering on a lot of the projects that WCC was actually working on. So that one that's like a must. All right. The other ones I'd say is like any of the other nonprofits that, kind of float your boat, right? If you're into birds and wildlife, well, New Jersey Audubon, okay? You're into Trout Unlimited has a chapter. Who else? CWF, Conservation Wildlife Foundation, right? They're actually a partner. They're like the nonprofit partner of Division of Fish and Wildlife. Those right there are really good. Nature Conservancy has a couple too. Nature Conservancy's chapter in Jersey, it's weird. Like they have a couple different sites, but I don't know how they do their volunteer work, but they're out there. That's another good one. But yeah, but if I had to pick one, it would definitely be Wildlife Conservation Corps, just because of the exposure was just ridiculous. It put you in so many different spots. It wasn't funny.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a question for you. So if you're looking at people who are sending applications to you and they're doing volunteer, how do you look at students who are getting involved in labs at Rutgers? Because there's so many labs and there's so much work happening at Rutgers, but that's also an academic perspective.
List it down. Yeah, that's another big thing. We're looking for experience. I can't tell you this enough, that the projects, when you get these projects, it's very difficult to bring somebody on and then have to slow it all down to get them up to speed, because a lot of the grants are timed, right? They might be, hey, you have to finish this stuff within a 2-year time frame, 3-year time frame, 5-year frame. So if I have to bring somebody on that has no, and it's for, I don't know, bird banding or point counts or whatever it is, and they have no experience in that, I can't slow it down. I don't have the time to teach it. I just can't. So if you're putting stuff in as, hey, I did this lab, I did this kind of modeling, I had this course for that, yeah, that jumps it up big time. And then I see that you're doing other stuff outside of your extracurricular stuff that's outside the academia world, where you went, hey, I was volunteering for WCC, and I was doing help with bird banding through the Wildlife Society. Yeah, that one gets put right to the top, because one, I can see you're motivated. Two, you've got experience, or at least has been trained enough that I can say, here's what we're going to do. I can give you the quick and dirty, and then send you on your way. Great. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. Definitely list your labs and what they entailed, because you get, for wildlife stuff, I can tell you right now, you get thousands of resumes. We opened up a position last year for a wildlife technician, basic, real, the amount of resumes I got was insane. And the other part of it too was we were getting so many resumes from other disciplines, like computer science, because it's a tough world out there. So we were getting people trying to transition. I get calls all the time from people saying, you know what, I've been a school teacher forever and I want to try something different. Is there an opening? You know, it's really hard. Everyone wants to get in and work with the animals. All right. It's a fun thing. Let's face it. But the competition is sick. It's really hard. So anytime you can cut that, you get that advantage and putting in that you've had all that stuff and you went the extra distance and you know those people, capitalize on it. Yeah.
But I kind of wanted to say something a little like after the recording real quick, but
Okay.
right now I just wanted to say I'm a little worried about the whole COVID thing right now.
Sure.
Because like I have a lot of like, for ecology, I know there's like a lot of lab stuff you gotta do
Yep.
before a certain time. I don't know if we're gonna like alter that a little bit because of just all the stuff that's happening right now, like maybe like extend it a little bit, but I haven't gotten any lab work done because I've been busy getting all like this core stuff done and like
Right.
this other stuff. I'm only a sophomore, but still it's like I'm getting a little anxious, like
Yeah.
and now with the COVID thing, it's like
Yeah,
come
man.
on, give me a break,
Yeah, I know. I tell you, dude, it's weird times, right? I'm with you. We're right now, my offices are closed. We can't go into the office. We're all working from home. The field work, thank God for field work, because it does get you out. And you're usually working either by yourself or maybe with only a limited couple people. And when you're out in the field, you spread out, we still got to wear masks and all that kind of stuff. But dude, I don't blame you. It is kind of rough. I mean, we were saying before, Kelly was saying I teach a class of Rutgers for bird ID. And
yeah, that sounds fun.
And it sounds
I
great.
have to check that out.
Yeah, but Aiden, we couldn't get out. We couldn't get out in bird. The last year, the last semester, I just finished it up for the fall and the spring. We couldn't get out, and it was rough because, as fun as it is, I know what you're saying, man. You need that interaction because I could tell you right now, had we gone out into the field and looked at those birds and you're interacting with folks, it would have made it that much more exciting. There's ways around it.
Yeah.
They're effective, but you're a sophomore. You're a sophomore, like you said, man. So I'm hoping that, as this thing progresses, they'll figure out a little bit more ways of getting people out in the field a little bit more. My son is up in SUNY ESF in Syracuse, and they're right now doing their labs outdoors. They are being able to do that, but that's it. The lab work is the only thing they're doing. I'm assuming that over time it'll evolve. They'll figure out ways. But in the meantime, Aiden, what I'd say is still look into WCC, look into Audubon, because even if you found something there that you can even help with, just say it's data entry, something we can do without having to worry about COVID and all that, and they can provide you with the maps or the field data or whatever, and you're taking care of that, still making your contacts. You're still providing great data. You're still providing something that's useful to that biologist for their particular project. And it's something. Might not be the most fun thing, we're not out taking a bear or something really cool, or holding the quail, releasing the whole thing. But it's something right now that it's still worth doing, man, because you need to make those connections. And the earlier you start, the better it's going to be. Sophomore is a great time to start doing that stuff.
Well, like, cause I'm thinking about, I'm debating where to go back. I'm probably gonna have to go back if I want to get stuff, useful. But I'm thinking about doing this class called freshwater ecology that seems to be getting a lot of high marks. That it sounds like there's something that has to do with like field work that's involved with it. So I mean, I don't know if that would count, but I guess it's something at least, to like start,
Yeah.
But but like the other thing you were saying about the data thing, like I'm doing analytical methods right now. I'm kind of lost. I'm not gonna lie. Like so far, I'm just like, what the hell's going on? But I mean, it's not the hardest class to pass, like in terms of like, just the quizzes and stuff. I'm still kind of worried, like even if I do pass, I'm not gonna have done well enough to like know what I'm supposed to do. But I don't know. I guess it's like I guess part of it is also like learning on the job, I guess.
Well,
Some
yeah.
of it. Yeah.
And dude, that's what I was saying before. This is the
Mm.
chance where by volunteering or reaching out to those folks and they're giving you stuff, they will take the time now to walk you through it. Because let's face it, it's also their data. They want to make sure that you're getting it right and all that, right? But
Yeah.
this is the time to do it. You don't want to learn on the fly when you're in a position that all of a sudden you're getting evaluated where they go, all right, well, hey, you said you could do this kind of stuff and you know, it might not be working out. So yeah, man, I would say you're going the right path. Think about those other things, like I said, and if it comes down to just doing it, let them tell you how it's done and just roll with it right now. It's okay.
All right. Thanks. That makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
Thank
man, we
you.
all
Appreciate it.
started out the same as you, right? We didn't know any of this kind of stuff. This is the time when you're learning. It's great. It's the best time of your life. It's going to be great.
Also, Aiden, everybody has problems with that class.
Yeah.
I took that, I've taken it, and I got an A, but I remember every week struggling. So it's not just you, it's
Yeah.
everybody. So don't feel bad.
I'm sorry for sapping everybody's time. I'm sorry about that.
No,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Working on
I'm
that,
in that-
not
Dude, I'm
talking as
also in
much.
that class. I have no idea what the denorm function is for. I've been
I am
emailing him like,
too.
what is
I'm also
what does
there.
this mean? Chlorate. I'm like, I don't know what this means. When do I use it? That's the only thing I want to know is, okay, I know how to use it. When?
That's the only thing you have to know, apparently, is you just need to know when to
I don't know
use
when to use it. I
the
don't know
equation.
when.
You know,
I don't know when.
I'm gonna get Art Studio for Dummies after all this. I'm gonna ask for that for
They
Christmas.
probably have that. Wait a minute.
Why
Wait
the
a
hell
minute.
not?
Good idea. Good idea.
Well, hey, that's the other thing too, guys, is remember, lean on your colleagues here at the Wildlife Society at Rutgers. Listen to that. Aiden brought it up. He's having a hard time in class. All of a sudden, 4 other people popped up. I went, oh God, you know, I'm having a hard time. These are your peers. These are your colleagues. These are the guys that you should also get to know and keep in touch with and all that. Because when you go out into that big world and you're in there, you might need one of you guys for a project, or maybe somebody can help you out. Maybe one guy is, specializes in bats, and then somebody else is specializing in forestry. And you know what? That project would all go together if you all work together. Lean on your colleagues. Ask them about those classes. Seek out and get help from them because they're all going through it. You guys are all getting the same thing.
Just curious, how often do you use RStudio on the job?
On what? I couldn't hear you, Glenn.
How often do you use RStudio on the job?
I don't.
Oh,
I don't. Yeah, so I don't know what to say about it, but I don't on that one. That I wouldn't put it this way. I wouldn't have to in the way I use it. There might be some other colleagues that might want to deal with that end of things. Yeah.
I have a question. Just you were talking about like volunteer opportunities with specifically like the NJ Audubon. I guess it's more personal, but like if you knew of any volunteer, like I'd love to do data entry, GIS, maps, anything like that.
So I would say this. Who's speaking? I don't know who this one is. Who is this?
Connor.
Hey, Connor. Oh, there you go. Hey, Connor. So yeah. So what I could do, I could send it to Kelly, and she could put it out there on our website, and you'll find it with all the NGOs. Okay, the non-government organizations. We literally list out, volunteer opportunities. Right now, there's 3 positions. 2 of them are for internships that they are taking resumes for. You might want to check it out. I had a student at Rutgers a couple years ago. He used to teach another class, and he came on later on, and he wound up getting an internship with me. And we had him up, all summer long. We're doing all kinds of different things with the quail work and all that. So I would say you just check those websites and just look for what they have on there and apply. But I'll make sure I give Kelly to give to you guys the link. She's got my contact information that I'm sure she's going to send out to you guys. And like I said before, feel free. I love it because I really have had an amazing experience in wildlife, wildlife research and habitat work. And I really want to give you guys these opportunities, because I did it the hard way. All right. I don't want anybody going through the experience how I did it. I really did it ass backwards. Okay. But I learned from it, and that's what I want to pass to you guys, who have a way better experience and get a lot more out of it when you go through these next couple of years.
Yeah, thank you. I'll definitely look at that.
Cool.